Okay, you guys, I'm trying to get set up here and get the lighting right. Let's see. So, as today we're having a Caregiver Wednesday Talk Series. Can we turn that down? And let me just wait and have a hi, Heather. There you are. Thank you so much for being patient. Okay, so let me. Hi, Heather.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being patient.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, I
Nice to
just
meet
got
you.
in this morning. I was supposed to arrive yesterday, but I just got here today. But that's
Whoa.
behind us. Well, today we're doing the Caregiver Talk Series, and I'm really excited to have you on. I've
Thank you.
been following you for quite some time, and I love that you believe that caregivers need to have more support, and that I am very passionate about.
Oh,
And so
thanks.
this was very important to me that I get other caregivers to know who you are, what you offer, and to know that it's a great resource.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the shadow on my face. We've had so much snow here.
Uh-huh.
So I'm from Southern Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
We just had a big snowstorm yesterday, and of course the sun comes out right now, which is great, but it was so cloudy. Um, so yeah, so thank you so much for having me on. And I just love what you're doing, as well as I know you and I shared a little bit about how we felt very isolated
Right.
doing this work.
Very much so.
I think I've been a bit like you in the sense I've looked and looked for mental health caregivers and stuff online, and come up really pretty empty-handed. And
Right.
being on Instagram in particular, and feeling kind of out of place
Right.
on this platform, um, with kind of wanting something you shared today. Actually, it was about guilt
Yes.
and wanting to say more, but then also having to be protective of my own emotional resources, in
Right.
terms of not exactly feeling, I feel accepted, but I don't quite feel heard. I hope that makes sense
It
to
makes
you.
perfect sense. It makes perfect
So
sense.
there's always a bit of a dance I feel like I'm doing here.
Yeah.
So I was just so grateful that you reached out to me. And yeah, so I just want to give you a lot of credit and
Thank you.
validation for your work and your personal experience, which I know both of us don't know that much about each other, but
Right.
I can imagine. And I want to offer you my support as well.
Thank you. And I've gotten a lot just from following you, and then
Thanks.
I sent an email for you to add me to your
Yeah,
email
thank you.
list as well, because I just believe we can never have enough resources, and I believe this is a community where we can support one another and share resources and help all of us, because it's a shortage. There's not enough. A call came in.
Oh, okay.
Um, but
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
want to go ahead and get started.
Sure.
Today, we were talking about loss of self and caregiving, and being a partner to a person with complex CPTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was an important. I want to begin by first reading your bio, because I think you do. There's awesome work there, and I'm going to do better this week. Last week, I messed up and said one of my guests, Sandra Boyd, was here, a nurse for 15 years. I didn't have my glasses on, girl. And so, And it was 38 years, and I still forgot my glasses. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna increase the size. So forgive me.
No
And
worries.
so I want to read your bio.
Okay.
Heather Tuba has a BA in Certified Trauma Recovery, Bachelor's of Art,
Yeah.
Certified Trauma Recovery Coach, is a writer, educator, and consultant with a specialization in the support of caregivers of persons with complex PTSD. Her work is also personal, as she is a partner to a person with CPTSD. As a writer, Heather's website provides an extensive library of blog posts specific to the impact of CPTSD on loved ones. She is a committed advocate and educator with a desire to see more holistic and accessible model of care that includes caregivers. In her consulting practice, she works with psychiatrists, nonprofits, and individual trauma therapists, providing insight and resources specific to caregivers. Heather's prior work has included mental health and addiction support in government and nonprofit sectors, online support group facilitation, and writing and editing for small business. Currently, her focus is on increasing the public dialogue around caregiving and CPTSD and creating written resources for loved ones. She and her family live in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to learn more about Heather, feel free to stop by her website at heathertuba.com. It'll also be in the comment section of this post after the live. So Heather, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. And
Sure.
the first question would be, would you please explain secondary trauma?
Sure. So I will just jump in for anyone listening. I have put together a free downloadable that you can go to my website. And if you go to, for anyone who's listens to this, go to my website, which LaShawn will link to, and then go to the contact form and you'll see instructions as to how to get that. It's a time limited offer. And so what I did was I put in this little downloadable, I've got the 3 blog posts that we're going to touch on, or 3 topics. And one is the one on secondary traumatic stress, caregiving, and loss of self. And then there's one on self-care, self-compassion. And then also I took out the main resource links from those posts and put them all in one on one page, because I'm all about keeping it simple. Like, we don't have time to go clicking around all the time.
Right.
It's one of my big frustrations. So if you just go to the second last page, the main ones that I thought were most helpful are all in that doc. So
Okay.
yeah. So anyway, you can get more info on secondary trauma in the blog post, because I know we're limited for time here. So basically, like I have a couple docs. I'm just looking on my laptop. So secondary traumatic stress is the experience, this is an actual definition, of tension and distress directly related to the demands of living and caring for someone who displays the symptoms of X mental health condition. In this case, I took that definition from it's not even available anymore, but Charles Figley was one of the founding thought leaders around secondary traumatic stress, to do with PTSD, compassion fatigue, burnout. And he wrote a book, which I got a used copy, so if anyone's interested, but it's pretty pricey, called Burnout in Families, where he does talk specifically about PTSD, which is very relevant for anybody, honestly. So it's really, living in situations of chronic overwhelm, which lead with little support, and support is a variety of means. It's education, It's access to participation in treatment so you can ask questions and find out how to deal with situations.
Right.
It's learning how to like stress management, but not just cognitive stress management, like really how to settle your body so that you can sleep okay and eat okay and go to your job, because most of us have jobs as well.
Right.
And some of us have other children.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to settle our own nervous systems,
Right.
and by settle, I mean, you might not feel like calm, but everything's an incremental here.
Right.
So 2% is better than, like, 2% down from 100% is still an improvement.
Right.
So, having those, all of those things help to prevent it leading to your own mental health diagnosis. And there's nothing wrong if you've had to get a diagnosis and
Right.
utilize those services, because you know what, I have at periods, so there's
I
no,
have to. I
there's
have to.
nothing, absolutely nothing unusual about that, I guess I
Right.
want to say. Very common.
It's important to validate. I think that's
Absolutely.
important.
I mean, I've had help for sleep, for anxiety.
Me too.
It really is part and parcel of it. And if that's been your experience, we need to create non-judgmental spaces for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, having your own mental health problems, I don't want to call them mental health issues, struggles, challenges,
Challenges. Yes.
mental health challenges, your own physical health challenges,
Mm-hmm.
needs to be normalized,
It
because
does.
even normalizing that will help you to feel calmer and better able to cope.
Right.
So, secondary traumatic stress covers a whole range of symptoms and issues. Can we completely get away from it? I'm not sure. With ongoing mental health challenges in a loved one,
Right.
I don't know. I kind of want to normalize it and, have discussions about how to better support one another
Right.
with it.
I agree totally. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned compassion, burnout. That was one of the things that I was talking about. I think it would have been around 2016, 2017, because I came up on it. Um, I discovered it while doing research, and they applied it more to formal caregivers.
Absolutely.
And I was
Yes.
like, why not include the informal caregiver? Like, are
Did
we
you see
just
my
absent?
face?
Don't you see that?
It's like,
Hello?
no kidding. I have a bookshelf full of books
Okay.
on topics of this, and it frustrates me to no end that this is not receiving the priority that it needs to,
Right.
because with CPTSD there is some, and I'm assuming it's probably parallel to other situations. There's research coming out of Europe on the daily life experiences of those with CPTSD, because right now in North America, in North American mental health, CPTSD is not a distinct diagnosis from PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, it was accepted by the 2019 World Health Organization as a distinct diagnosis.
I didn't know.
And yeah, I have a couple of articles on my website about this.
Okay.
So as of, which I linked to one in my stories, if you go there, you'll see it.
Okay.
Um, in 2022, so 1 year from now, the formal diagnosis of complex PTSD can be given with countries that use the classification system of the WHO, which is the International Classification. ICD is the acronym.
Okay.
So that's why I think we're also seeing a bleed over into North America with the use of PTSD. It's a mouthful. Um, it's always a mouthful
It is.
talking about all this stuff. So there are people, and where you see it even in social media platforms, using it and talking about it because people do know it's distinct. However, the diagnostic classification is different here than in Europe.
Right.
And so there's now, because it's been formally accepted by the World Health Organization into this classification system, there is now opportunity for research to be done specific to complex PTSD. And as you will find on my website, and I linked to it in my stories, the one study that's come out specific to relatives or called Caregivers, and I had the amazing opportunity to interview that researcher this past September.
Really?
Yeah,
where can we find?
Well, that again is on my website.
Okay.
And I've linked to it in my stories. So that research on the experiences of relatives was absolutely mind-blowing for me, because it really paralleled my own experience and the experiences of people that I interact with and come across. So it was so validating to see that there actually is a research team who have done one study, and they're planning on doing, of course, it's been disrupted with COVID, but they're planning on doing a pilot project with the relatives, which would encompass education, formal social support group, availability to participate in meetings with the treating clinicians, and there was several things that they're looking at.
Okay.
So that was extremely validating for me to read that this is being taken seriously. At least in it's coming out of Germany.
Not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
There was a study here. I want to get the name of that study from you too.
Yeah, I will. I'll send it to you.
There was a study done here, and it was called On Pins and Needles.
Okay.
And it was the first time. I mean, when I saw that, there was like angels singing. I'm like, oh, somebody gets it. Someone understands, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's encouraging and yet discouraging, because these things are just, they come out so irregularly. And I mean, I really had to dig around for it. But it was extremely validating. And I find it encouraging that, complex PTSD is now much more a part of the public discourse than it was. Well, I started blogging 5 years ago.
Okay.
And then the last 2 years really moved into loved one care and support. But it's just much more accepted. I mean, accepted as a term, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question for you.
Yeah.
What can we as caregivers do to avoid the loss of self?
Well, it would help if we were better supported.
Yeah, thank you. Resources?
Yeah, yeah. How about support? And how about not having to create our own support, right? So, but since that's not very available yet, how can we do this? Number one, so I wrote out a brief list. Practice self-acceptance and acceptance of the condition.
That's big.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Well, again, it would be helpful if we had cohesive information. And cohesive information, not just for us as caregivers, but for the other person.
Right.
So there's
The language is
the
important.
language,
Hmm.
having the same information given to both people or all peoples in the relationship, not
Right.
having to, it's very fragmented. And so one person, the person perhaps with the diagnosis, whatever it is, gets information over here, and
Right.
then we are the people that support get information from over here, and then we are trying to talk about this amongst ourselves and having conflicting language and
Right.
information, which creates an incredible amount of
Frustration.
conflict and stress.
It does.
So having, I mean, at the very least, treating clinicians providing the same information to all people
Right.
involved.
Right. That's what I was thinking in terms of HIPAA, because that's kind of a, I understand its purpose, but as a caregiver, it can be a hindrance. And having a meeting after, I mean, we don't have to go into the therapy session,
No, no, no,
but
that's not what
going,
I mean
yeah,
either.
but going, I know, I understood. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I know
But
you do.
after, yes, but afterwards, it would be nice to get the language and to get, okay, this is the projection and this is what the treatment plan is and this is the strategy. It helps because then it can, if our loved one, it happens to be in crisis at that time, they may have difficulty retaining that information and relaying it back. And then
No
so then
kidding.
we're not able to be of means of support.
I think that's a very unreasonable expectation to
It
have on the
is.
person receiving treatment. In the case of CPTSD, you're
Right.
dealing with dissociation, with dysregulation, which is one of the criteria set out by the ICD
Mm-hmm.
for CPTSD. It's unreasonable to expect your client to go home and relay that
Right.
to their supporter.
Right.
That doesn't mean that later, like once they've had substantial treatment, that can't be the case. But
Right.
I don't understand that at all. That has been one of my biggest
Foolish.
frustrations.
It's just foolish. I just don't understand it.
And so I think, in Canada, we, uh, treatment for CPTSD is privatized. There is no publicly available treatment for CPTSD. And so we, as the loved ones, are left to try to go into a session, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't.
Right.
So, but coming back to your question, how to avoid loss of self, practicing your own self, finding a way to practice self-acceptance of your emotions, which probably won't involve your loved one.
Right.
Some of the things that I've done, I tend to find this helpful if I can pair it with movement.
Okay.
So, because engaging your body somatically helps with moving stress through your body.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, and I know other people have done this too, vigorous walking. In my case, I do run. And during those times, so like for half an hour, 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
I let my mind think about whatever it wants to think about.
Okay.
And it's, for me, I've done it for quite a long time. So I'm not saying that's going to work off the hop, but allowing a space where you can really have a practice of self-acceptance, a practice of your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
If you find that overwhelming, um, to start, you can, well, one, I think just knowing that there's people like yourself, myself, talking about this can be
Right.
regulating for people. So
Yes.
can be calming for people, that it's okay to think whatever thought you want to think. It's okay
You
to
can
feel
exist in
whatever you
multiple.
need to
Yeah.
feel. Yeah, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It can also bring up some pretty difficult emotions.
Yes.
And so finding ways to have those emotions in a somewhat contained space is really important.
Right.
To be honest, we're told to go to therapy to do that. And
Right.
I know there's a place for that if you can afford it, if it's
Right. Right.
accessible. And I'm not even talking about issues with gender or racism that are huge problems within the
Right.
therapy profession, because I'm
Right.
white and I can go and find someone.
Right.
But whether they'll understand my place as a partner to someone with
Right.
CPTSD, I haven't found anyone.
No. No.
So I've utilized other, and I have had therapy in the past, like
Me too.
quite far past, but I've utilized other means of managing, and so I think that sometimes we do a disservice to people by just saying go see a therapist.
It's almost like the shooing away.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Especially when there's not a space for us yet, like
Hmm.
an official space.
Yes, yeah,
Because
yeah.
then you get the title of enabling, and it's much more complex than that.
Or there's assumptions about the mental health of the caregiver
Yes,
that may or may not be accurate.
that's so
But
true.
there's a stigma and a perception about the person who's in a relationship,
Yeah.
and that is simply not accurate.
No, it's not. Especially without consideration for, I mean, there's a consideration for doctors and those in the mental health profession needing to have time to step away, needing to have somewhere to go to process that. And
Hmm.
then they're only spending a fraction of the time with the patient, whereas the mental health family caregiver is spending sometimes full time. And
Hmm.
so not understanding that this is totally different. This means that I'm on a majority of the time. And so there has to be, I use the term, a radical self-care, because you have to learn how to be able to calm yourself, bring yourself back to a place of grounding on the fly, because
Yes,
sometimes you don't have the opportunity to say, I'm going to take 2 or 3 hours and walk away. You may be in crisis, and you may have to, learn to cope on the fly. So I agree. Hmm.
yeah, I agree with that. In a lot of my writing, I do talk about that in
Yes.
terms of, it's not about, I mean, I have my own exercise thing that I've done for years, and it's very anchoring for me, but I'm not saying everybody can do that. And that's why I talk about so much about like small nuggets of care that you
Right.
can take into a bathroom stall.
Thank you. Or the car.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So that you can learn how to absorb things
Yes.
like now.
Be able to process it,
And that
compartmentalize it if necessary, and come back to it when you have the resources.
that's right. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. So that is an acceptable form of self-care,
it is.
and it's a necessary form.
It is.
So I mean, I am really all about that. You have to take it with you.
Yes. It has to be
It
portable.
has to be in your bag or in your pocket or in your phone or whatever, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because you can't stop
No,
sometimes.
you
I
can't.
mean, a lot of the times it's very overwhelming.
It can be. It
Mm-hmm.
can be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have another question
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
you. Well, that's kind of redundant now that I think about it. What advice would you give to new caregivers about self care? And you just gave us that. So I'll go to the next question. What would you like to see change in healthcare for yourself or your loved one, if anything? I know we just said all
Nothing.
that, huh?
um, Man, that's such a big question.
It is.
I think the privatization of mental health care is such a global problem.
It is.
And Canada is just because I'm Canadian, although we are privileged to, and it is a privilege to be able to go to the doctor,
Right.
go to the emergency room, go to the hospital, and not have a bill come to us or have to pay private for that.
Right.
The experience of mental health care in Canada is it's privatized. You can't get in to see a psychiatrist for a year to 2 years. There's no follow up by a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists are simply to the majority, and there could be people that have different experiences, but the majority are for medication, prescription, and then you are sent back to your general practitioner for medication follow-up, even if you have things like CPTSD, which can have multiple areas that need attention.
Right.
So that, that isn't acceptable. The the provision of long-term psychotherapy through privatization is ridiculous, but that's what we
It
have.
makes no sense to me.
No.
Like I can have a long-term illness and live with diabetes and have support available to me for as long as I'm going to need it. If I have to come off the medication, fine. But if this is a long-term illness that requires management, I can get that. But somehow that doesn't connect that mental health is sometimes a long-term illness and requires lifetime management.
Yes,
And
yeah,
then it
yeah.
can change because sometimes medications stop working. Sometimes the body, gets used to it. Now you have to find a new,
Or
so
if
there's no room.
there's more stress, such as with COVID,
Right, right,
then you do need to have adjustments to your medication,
right.
potentially. So I don't know if that's ever, like, I hate to be dismal, but I'm not sure that's ever going to change. Maybe I'm more realistic.
No, I
Um,
feel you. I feel you completely. I talked a lot about respite and been coming up with respite programs that
mhm.
we would have to put to fill in the gaps ridiculously, to fill in the gaps for where healthcare is failing us. Because people are not faring well.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there's a constant, oh, well, we're going to reimagine healthcare. We're going to do the work, and this system needs overhauling. And all while you're talking about this, people are still suffering.
Yeah, yeah. I know there is a bit more of a movement towards more peer counseling,
Yes, there is.
peer support,
Hmm.
um, which I think is a very needed contribution
It is.
to the healthcare field. But what I would like to say about that in terms of caregivers would be, I don't want to be excluded from that.
Right.
And I feel
Right.
like we are.
We are. Right.
And
Currently,
so
yes.
I would really like to have, there's no reason that there can't be peer counseling, peer support for people such as ourselves.
Now,
And
I've heard,
that can't run parallel to something or in
right.
tandem with.
Well, I was talking with Sandra Boyd, my guest last week, and I know California has a couple of programs with peer support she mentioned, and I think NAMI has a peer support group for caregivers, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. I happened to be staying in a hotel when I was traveling in Mississippi and
Mm,
happened to stumble into a group of people that were there attending a NAMI conference for peer support. And I got to talking with them, and they invited me to sit in the next morning. And so
Okay.
I stayed an extra day and sat in. And it's amazing the amount of work they're doing in terms of peer support for our loved ones. But that's in Mississippi.
Right.
We can't get it across the states,
Right.
and as you mentioned, this is an issue worldwide. This is an issue that we're facing worldwide. And so, I just believe too that we're going to have respite programs, and it's probably going to take people like you and I and our organizations that are going to have to work with other organizations that do the same thing and try and build our own community and address it until it's taken seriously enough. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I agree. I think that too, that it's really like I'm an individual person, and I think you are as well.
Yes.
It's really overwhelming um, Caregivers Haven said
Oh,
something.
yes, that's Sandra right there. Hi,
Okay,
Sandra.
excellent.
Okay, she says NAMI and also our county behavioral health has a great peer support and family support. Yes, I remember she told me about that. Yeah.
Um, it's really um, it, individuals are doing things, but I really feel there needs to be a collective effort here. One, because it's emotionally draining work.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, there is the opportunity to collaborate, debrief, pool resources is really needed.
It is.
I have done some peer support and I do not offer that anymore just because I feel that given I'm one person who's also living with my own situation,
Yes.
um,
I had to
right now,
stop some too.
right now I'm
Yes.
focusing more on providing written resources,
And training.
um, because it's really overwhelming.
It
And
is.
so I think my vision would be more to have a collective sort of grassroots effort
Mm-hmm.
and
Mine's
to
too.
say, look, this is a valid area of need. In fact, I think it's not going to, it is a, a growing area of need because so many people are having mental health issues simply from the global climate that we're living
Right.
in.
Right.
So I think everybody is going to be touched by this in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody is going to be touched by caregiving in some way.
Right.
And so I really do think the time is now to start to really talk about that in a more cohesive fashion.
Right. The challenge that I faced is that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, but not the squeaky caregiver.
I no,
It
I'm 100% hear
mhm.
you with that. Yes.
You're seen as the troublemaker, where you're always complaining and you're not understanding that doctors are doing the best they can, and this is not a reflection of the doctors. We're talking about a culture. We're talking about a
Mm-hmm.
culture that supports stigma, that supports
Mm-hmm.
bias, and so I agree with you. It can be very laborsome, and I had to cut back on some of my support in terms of peer support too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my last question is, how does your organization support caregivers?
Well, at this point, primarily I do some consulting work,
Hmm.
which is really I feel that getting clinicians in whatever capacity on board with this, so people that express interest, people that email me or message me with questions, and having the opportunity to engage at that level
Hmm.
is really important.
Right.
Right now, I have this year, so far, I have three things that are coming out.
Okay.
Um, One is a book on, like, just a short book that'll be on my website by
Okay.
April on caregiving and CPTSD.
In
Um,
April of this year?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's on my site. Just a heads up on that.
Okay.
Then, secondly, I'm actually submitting a journal article, I hope today, to an academic journal on basically what we've talked about. They asked me
Okay.
to write something, so that's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So that's a great opportunity. And then I'm being featured in a book written
Okay.
by two Toronto psychiatrists coming out in the fall, talking
Okay.
about this exactly in one of their chapters. So
In the fall of 2021 this year.
2021. So I'll be
Okay.
sharing that later. But
Okay.
that was a super great opportunity because
I
they
bet.
are actually, they work in a huge hospital in Toronto, and they
And so you're
recognize.
able to impact. Oh,
Yeah, it's been amazing
that's
interacting with
amazing.
these doctors, and really, I feel very grateful for that.
Yes.
So right now, it's really creating stuff
Yes.
and taking care of myself.
Priority number one.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Well, I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me
Oh,
and
it's
caregivers
been an
on.
honor. Thank you so
I
much. Thank
thank you
you.
so very much. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I look forward to coordinating or collaborating with you
I
in the
think that
future
would be really wonderful. And you are doing this every week. Is that my understanding? As
Mhm.
much as possible?
as much as possible, as often as I can get guests on. And then when I don't have the guest on, then I'll come in and I'll fill in the gaps.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, please feel free to reach out. I know we'll stay in touch. For
Yes, we will.
anyone listening, I will have that free downloadable on my website via the
Yes.
contact form.
Hmm.
So please head over there and I will get that out to you.
And that link
Uh,
is in your story or?
it's in my contact form. I just have it up for the next 3 days because I
Okay.
know that's all there's going to be. This will be up for another 24 hours.
Right.
Um, so if you head over there and I will get that out to you
Okay. Now you
within
may
24
get some
hours.
residual people to contact you later because
Okay.
I upload to YouTube on my
Oh, you
channel.
do. People were
Yeah, but
asking about that.
what's crazy is it takes a week for a video to upload.
Can
So
you let me know when that's up then?
I will.
And then I can make arrangements
I
about
will.
that.
Actually,
Okay.
Sandra, if you're on here, yours is up now. I was going to email you today. I just had a lot on my plate just right now. But um, yeah, I'll let you know as soon as it
Okay, I
finally
wasn't
goes
aware of
up.
that.
As soon as it goes up, then I'll send
Okay.
you an email and I'll hit you up on IG and let you know it's up.
Okay, great,
That
great,
way, if
great.
you start getting these people and you don't understand what's happening, it may be
Okay.
residual. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Um, okay, and if anybody has any further questions for me, best way to reach me is through my contact form, which is
Okay.
www.heathertuba.com.
And I
Um,
pinned it here for you guys
yeah,
as well.
so you can send me a message through there, and I'll get back to you. Yeah, I try to keep my DMs free, so
Yes,
preference is for my website, please. Yeah. So thank you
okay.
so much. This is really great.
You're welcome. I'm
Yeah.
going to get going. I have an appointment to get to, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks
I'm going to
everybody
do
for watching.
a little ending I do for those who are watching this on the replay. I want to
Okay.
say thank you if you made it to this point in the video, and please stay tuned. There are a lot of other great resources that are coming your way. And you have a good day. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye, Heather.
Bye.